Visit elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
Welcome to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, your host, and tonight we're going to explore real estate, specifically real estate in Elmhurst. And the exceptional panel of people that I have with me tonight are experts on that subject. We have Dennis Sluga from RE/MAX, Joyce Sloan from Sloan Commercial, and Leo Reedy from L.W. Reedy. And thank you for joining me. The old real estate axiom, location, location, location. The answer for years and years and years was Elmhurst. Is that still true?
I think so. As far as commercial industrial, within minutes you're at any interstate that you can go east, north, south, west, and 15 minutes from O'Hare is a real plus in the commercial side.
I think with the residential, it's kind of interesting because years ago we would get a lot of people from other suburbs that would be shopping the various suburbs. Today, a big influx of people from downtown, young families, a couple of young children. They're using the train to commute. They're going out to O'Hare. So I think it's even more so now with the young families coming in.
As far as commercial, you got two of the largest switch yards as far as railroad. And when I saw the economy coming back, you count the train cars, and they got longer and longer. So that means that's the paycheck coming in.
What about Elmhurst? Location aside, but what about Elmhurst has always made it desirable, continues to make it desirable from strictly a real estate perspective? When people come in, what are they looking for?
District 205 has been ranked up near the top.
Schools?
The schools,
Okay.
and the private schools. We've got very good private schools.
Plus we have a college too.
The college does so much for our town.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen change a lot is just the activity in downtown Elmhurst. And here again, going back to the younger families, Sunday mornings I'm down there often, and they're out there with their coffee, walking around. Maybe not with the weather like it is today, but basically just a lot of activity. 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. It's kind of nice to see it prosper.
Yeah. Speaking of activity, we have a parade path that's packed on weekends. It's packed. And the Elmhurst run, the Turkey Trot was 10,000 runners this year. Yeah. That's as big as a marathon.
So it's amenities, but it's got to be more than amenities. I mean, granted, there are a number of things in Elmhurst that are not necessarily everywhere else. But there's a lot of places that have good schools. There's a lot of places that have good shopping. There's a lot of. What else is going on? Has anything to do with the history, the longevity of the quality of life in town, do you think?
Well, I really think when you talk about schools, it's interesting. A town like Elmhurst, they have 3 high schools in a community with 40-some thousand. So I think it's not just a question of having them, but I think there's a different choices in so many different things. So I think that's been always a special thing with that. And then with having a college in there, new hospital. So we have so many amenities that it's been a very big part of the success.
I think the downtown does hire a lot of the college kids, which is really great for both the downtown and for the kids to earn some extra money. I mean, it seems like every time I eat a meal in town, you just know they're Elmhurst College kids and they're earning a living, and it's great. It's just great to see it all work together.
I'm sorry.
Well, for instance, my kids were born in Elmhurst Hospital. They worked at the Dairy Queen. They worked at the Dominic's. They pushed the not the golf carts, the carts for, and they worked their way up that way, and it was a great place to bring them up.
I want to explore the differences such as they are. Joyce, I know you primarily do commercial. Leo, Dennis, primarily residential.
Sure.
I'm sure there's crossover.
Oh, yeah.
But What's the primary difference? How does what you do differ from what they do generally?
Well, I deal with the businessman and woman, and lately I am really thrilled of how many want to come to Elmhurst and be in downtown Elmhurst as far as office space. And so I've leased quite a bit of the downtown. It seems like employees are really looking out to be green almost. So they allow their employees the right to take a train or take a bus, and Elmhurst provides all that.
And the incentives to open an office downtown, there's up to $5,000 to $10,000 through the chamber to open an office that helps pay the rent, gets you started. It's a big boost.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the biggest differences that I see with the commercial is that it's so much referral business, somebody that you talk with in residential, maybe sold a home to 10, 12, 15 years ago, and there's a lot of follow-up with that, where with the commercial part, it's a new face frequently.
Let's take a few-year walk down memory lane and go to the time when everybody seemed to take the position that real estate could only go up. I mean, it's gone up forever, so why would it stop going up? And then it stopped going up. When did that happen in your minds?
I think 2008.
Well, that was one of the worst years. It started right after '05 was a peak. And I did some statistics. 2010 was like the low spot for numbers sold and prices dropping 25%. One of your questions was, how much did it drop? About 25% was the worst year. And I did all the statistics back to, you can go through the MLS statistics up to '06. So I went back, 7 years.
So 25%
at the peak,
value,
the peak drop or lowest drop.
Yeah, the lowest point in the respective markets. Now, was that across the board? Was that residential and commercial?
No, I thought the commercial was as bad as yours is the residential, but I did the same statistics. I went through CoStar, and I was really amazed, but then not, because Elmhurst has always been a flourishing city, and the difference in the vacancy from 5 years ago, 2008 to today, is only 3% less. So I mean, that's hats off to Elmhurst for what they offer and why people still came here even in the tough times.
Well, and I've talked to people at the city who will say that some of their own surveys, some of their own anecdotal research would be to look at some of the other communities' vacancy rates. In some cases, hard numbers. In other cases, just the eyeballing of downtowns and whatever. And we seemed to fare better.
Right.
At the same time, things were difficult. Now, the three of you make your living in real estate. What was that roller coaster like? 2005,
our office,
2008?
Yeah. Our office shrunk in size. Agents left for other professions or went part-time. We had to cut our overhead, go to a smaller office. And that's still happening today. And the large offices are going to smaller spaces. And people are working more out of their house. It's all on the internet, voicemail and texting and what have you. So.
Now, do all the commercial properties get listed the same way the residential properties do?
Well, the commercial brokers, we subscribe to CoStar and LoopNet, and the statistics were, I never counted or tried to find out how much office space was available in Elmhurst. I never did. I just knew that it was plentiful. And it's 1.7 million square feet of office space throughout Elmhurst, and it's 6.5 million square feet of industrial. And for a city of 44,000 people or what, that's great. I mean, it brings a lot of people here to shop and buy gas and groceries and clothing and different things on your lunch hour, so it's
Now, when I came to Elmhurst in the early 80s and bought my first house, I went to a real estate office and sort of knocked on the door and said, I'm here, you need to take me around. And I would imagine now with the internet and where the people show up and say, I want to go there and there and there and there. Yes? No?
Yes. I could drive a coupe. I don't need a four-door car anymore because I don't drive people around as much as I used to. But we still are there for the inspections and the appraisals. But basically bringing people around, they meet us at the house. They already have a lot of their research done.
I think they have their basic ideas of what they want, but until they go out and go through the houses and the properties, it's just really hard because the pictures and the virtual tours, I mean, there's so many wonderful parts of it, but until you actually go in and...
Nobody's going to buy a house and not go in it.
Oh, yeah.
They have to kick the
mean,
bricks.
You need to see, I think, 20, 30 houses and physically going through, so... It's in many ways they get started. I think the number is 80% start with the internet, but it's still fundamentally you still got to go.
We
back.
still do open houses. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a good way
sure.
to meet people and show the house off.
Now, Dennis, you talked about 25% loss in value or price.
It was 2010.
2010.
Yeah, and loss in numbers.
Now, obviously, that's a statistic and an average. Now, was that blanket universal across town? Or is that the average? In other words, was there an area that was lost 50% and another area that lost less than that, equaling 25%?
It was the average sale price, not the median.
Okay.
For instance, if I just took homes from 500,000 up, we'd have a median price of 750,000. Well, that's your we call them McMansions, the newer stuff. But this is basically your basic home to start at 250, whatever. For instance, I was still buying homes in 09 thinking that was the bottom of the market. I couldn't get in 2010 what I paid in 09, and I'm a realtor. And I rent these out and hoping they appreciate, and they weren't appreciating. So.
Well, we didn't have our rent reduced as much as that. I thought it was, but then when I look back at the statistics, I think what landlords tried to do is keep the rent stabilized, but as new people came in, offered more free rent, and it got to be so that the rate stayed more stable, and then they just gave it up front because it was vacant anyway, so it doesn't matter if it was vacant for 3, 4, 5, 6 more months, at least then the rent would kick in after the free rent was over. So there was under $1 difference square foot, both office and industrial, which surprised me when I did my search too.
Well, I know the business parks had just a ton of vacancies, and one of the things about the Elmhurst business parks that, frankly, we've explored on other programs, it was all built about the same time. There are incredible similarities between the structures, and there are things that people are looking for today that unfortunately don't exist. Hopefully they will down the road. Landlords had to be really nervous, losing tenants, in some cases losing really good tenants because the economy just had disappeared. I mean, you remember some specific stories or surprises from that time?
Well, the landlords wanted to keep a tenant, and they knew that another landlord would maybe be less rent. And a lot of landlords were proactive that I know of and actually signed them up early and reduced the rent or gave them new carpet and paint or gave them some perks to just keep them.
I cut rent back from $1,500 a month to $1,000. So,
Right.
And they were taking care of the property. So we shared it. I had a mortgage payment about $1,000, so there was no cash flow. So
I think the other thing that's interesting is to the non-educated realtors such as yourselves. There's a point where prices are down, interest rates are at all-time lows, pent-up demand, but people wouldn't pull the trigger. Consumer confidence also at an all-time low. That had to be another kind of unique challenge. You go from a market where things get snapped up because of shortage and when interest rates were not even anywhere near as low, and you slide into a market where prices are down, I mean, all the things I just said, that's a tremendous adjustment for your respective sales staffs, for yourselves, but for your staffs as well. Leo, what'd that feel like?
Well, I think first of all, it was very interesting because we started to see from that 2009 period where the activity was, one of the things that's very interesting, 2009, 2010, when you'd show houses, I wouldn't have a statistic. I don't think you could pull a number up, but I'd say a third to a half of these houses were vacant. You know, those were people that were coming out of that hot market and buying a condo somewhere else and having maybe a condo downtown and having a house out here, and I can always sell my house. So there were a lot of vacancies. Now it's very, very rare when you see a house that's not occupied in it. So I think it really there were just dynamics that were going on that none of us could relate to. I mean, I have many, many years in the business, and have seen other periods of time. Those years I've been there, it only goes back to maybe 1980 when interest rates were so high, where you really saw a drop in the prices. For the most part, to your point a little earlier, you know, we've always been spoiled with that little bit of appreciation, or maybe 5 or 6% appreciation in a year's time, and then over many, many years it'd be there. So I think that, you know, we started seeing the activity, but nothing quite correlated where, you know, prices should go up. When we got into 2011 and 12, where we started to get our number of sales that had increased, the prices were still kind of flat. Then, as we got into the early part of 2012, there was a pretty good bump in the prices. And that's really come back in the last year.
Getting 2 or 3 offers on every house, over full price, things like that. We had recessions, because I've been a realtor since 1967, but recession will last 2 to 3 years. So you figure 80, 82, and you figure during just before the Clinton years, whatever. So I figured 09, start buying again. Well, we're still in a trough, but we're coming out of it now in spades, especially in Elmhurst. New construction, there's double the new construction this year than what we had previous years.
There was all sorts of finger pointing during that period of time. You know, people were pointing fingers at you. Sure. People were pointing fingers at bankers. People were pointing fingers at the government. People were, I mean, kind of a perfect storm of issues. Can that happen again?
Well, I hope not. But on a commercial basis, I couldn't sell a building because they could, a client could not get money because of what happened on the residential side. Banks were just not loaning on a commercial side at all. They were trying to bail out and figure out what they can do, and so it was very difficult. I mean, I had well qualified people to buy buildings, and just couldn't get the financing. So
no SBA loans?
And well, the SBA was getting difficult too because, that's only 40%, and you still need, it's 50, 40, and then 10% for the customers.
For a while, we had FHA. 2010, 2011, FHA was the only thing we had. Right. There was no other financing.
Right.
I think it's interesting because they talk about the residential real estate is really kind of pulling everything down, and certainly it was a big part of that. But then when you get into financing, things were tight in residential, but there were always places you could go to get your loans. And for the most part, there really wasn't a lag on it as compared to the commercial. I think that they've really had a little different part of it. But I think it's pretty healthy right now. I think as lenders are making the loans, the rates are higher. They've gone up as we've seen, but my goodness, they're at 4.5%. I mean, they were so low that anything would sound high, but rates are still very, very good.
Going back to my first home buying experience in Elmhurst, which was in 1981. So I got to pick up the classic 16% 5-year balloon. It was the only thing available. Yeah, that was exciting on the other side of things, because that had to be just as challenging, but from a completely different perspective.
CDs are paying 13% on a CD.
Sure,
That's a lot of money. In fact, one of our agents had bought, rather than a house, he put in a 17% CD. That's $17,000 in interest in 1 year. Amazing.
We're going to go to break in a second, but the low point year, you say it's...
The statistics say 09 to 2010, or 2010, right in there.
Joyce, you...
I think I saw it in 2008 and maybe the beginning of 9. Everything just stopped. Yeah.
Leo?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, statistically, you can see that was the bottom, and it bounced from there a little bit, and then we got into 2011 and 2012.
And that's where we'll start when we come back.
Right?
Yeah. You're watching Elmhurst Now, and we're talking about Elmhurst real estate. And we'll be back.
The Churchville Schoolhouse opens the door to the best education in history. Visitors to the Churchville Schoolhouse take a step back in time to watch history unfold in a restored National Register of Historic Places property that dates to the Civil War era. Students of today walk in the footsteps of local farm children from the early days of DuPage County for an authentic living history experience led by a schoolmarm of the early 1900s. A visit to the Churchville Schoolhouse is hands-on, educational, and fun. Participants use slate chalkboards and McGuffey readers for the day's lessons. And children will be asked to follow proper classroom etiquette. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are practiced, and students test their skills during an old-fashioned spelling bee. And of course, no school day is complete without recess featuring games of the early 1900s. The schoolhouse is a popular place for scouts and day camps, too. Group visits can also be arranged for service clubs, tour groups, and other adult organizations. The Churchville Schoolhouse Living History program is operated by the Elmhurst Historical Museum. Call the museum today to book a field trip or find out more information. Call 630-833-1457 or visit our website at churchvilleschoolhouse.org. The Churchville Schoolhouse is waiting to open the doors for your school or community group. Plan a memorable learning experience today for the best education in history.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, and we're talking to Leo Reedy, Joyce Sloan, and Dennis Sluga, realtors in Elmhurst, about Elmhurst real estate. We've sort of gone through the disaster story, so it's like all those disaster movies we see where there's an absolute low and then things start to get better. So Leo, you targeted, 2011 as kind of things got better. Did they get better any sooner than that?
Well, I think there was a gradual pickup from 2009 as you'd go along. And even in the beginning of 2011, it was probably the summer of 2011 before, you were busy on the weekends and the evenings.
Well, I was going to say, as real estate professionals, what happens that, the hair on the back of your neck goes up because you know what's going on. It's changed, and what specifically starts to happen? And I mean, I know it's got to be more people and the phone rings more and whatnot all, but you're professionals. You get an inkling long before that.
Well, in Elmhurst we're known for teardowns, but the former mayor said build-ups. Call them build-ups. It's in other words a bad word, but builders are paying for a standard McMansion. They're paying $300 to $350 just for the lot, just for the dirt. Then when the market went down. 250, you could buy a nice lot, 50, 60 feet, put a 4,500 square foot house on it. And they were paying $250. So I just talked to my Irish builder that was building homes with me back in 07, 06. And he says, is the market back? He says, well, you can get a decent lot for $250 now, where before he was paying $350. So that helps a little bit, because at the market's back. And we've got homes $1.5 million to $2 million that are amazing. It's amazing what we've got here. We're approaching Hinsdale in prices.
Woo.
And that's always been my goal as a realtor, to get to Hinsdale prices. So.
Leo, you're the other residential guy here. Does that hold true?
Well, I think the question about when you know that things are happening, even though we're in the marketplace, I don't think we know. We can see there's a difference. And I go back to when it got slow, and I can remember vividly, it was at that 2007 period, and we had wonderful houses, and they just wouldn't sell. You get 60, 90, and 120 days, and it wouldn't sell, and you just shake your head. I don't understand why not, because they had before. And I think it's the exact opposite when you come out of the market. You couldn't pinpoint it. I mean, we don't have a chart that you can measure it daily, but you get a house that comes in, and it's selling pretty quickly, or it's getting a lot of showings, or you're getting the phone to ring. So I think it's a difference in the activity as compared to the transaction being completed.
Commercial? How do you know?
Everybody held back for a long time, and then I see it coming. People are going off their kitchen table and actually getting office space, and people are expanding, and I have had 4 expansions already this year, so that is great, that people are now feeling more confident that they're going to stay in business and do better, and so I'm really happy what I see as far as, in addition to just the phone ringing, it's landlords who pulled their buildings off the market for a while, just saying, let's
try again.
Let's just start up fresh in 6 months, and sometimes they decided in a year, and now I've got more listings than I've had in a long time. So,
is there a and I'm thinking the question is based on residential, but it may apply, Joyce, to commercial as well. Is there a perfect price point as a realtor? Is there an area of price where you really like to operate? I mean, obviously everybody wants to sell on the upper end, but what kind of stock? I mean, $500,000 houses sell quicker than $800,000 houses?
They appeal to more people's income, yes. And last year it was said if you had a good listing at 250 to 300, it would pop. And now you need something like 350 or higher. And again, depending on where it's at, it's got to have a decent location. So.
I think we're really fortunate in Elmhurst because we have such a great array of prices. I mean, you can still, a couple coming in maybe wanting to be in here for the schools or all the other reasons that we cited before. And there's 1,200, 1,300 square foot houses that are in that $350,000, $325,000 price range, and those are always saleable. But I think if you were look at a price range, I'd say maybe that 400, 450 would really be kind of the classic. But we have such a wonderful, selection of the other houses, and 750 and 800,000, over $1 million. So we're just lucky to have such a nice selection, and that's what people are looking for.
on a commercial, it's very different because CoStar rates every building either an A, B, or C. So I have a client that needs high image, and that's an A building. So it's not so much price, it's really the image, and the same goes for an industrial building. Sometimes the guy just needs a warehouse, but other times he needs, high ceilings and state-of-the-art office space. So, and that's industrial's also basically rated A, B, and C. and there's price difference, of course, you know, and so it's different for me. It's more what they're looking for.
Well, from a consumer perspective, you know, they've been riding the same roller coaster,
Right.
but you know they've either been in the back of the car or the front of the car, depending on how you want to look at it. So now they're back in bidding wars.
Oh, I've heard of
They're
people.
bidding wars, and you said earlier, Dennis, you know, average time on the market is going down and the prices are going up. And
I listed a house the other day. It was the first one in that area in about a year. It sold in 14 hours, 10,000 over asking price. And if you'd have told me, all my statistics said, well, first of all, it's not good appraised, but they had enough money down that they got it to work out. But a lot of times we can't see the forest from the trees. We look back and say, hey, that was a good year we had. But here, you see things popping like that. It's a good market.
that's interesting too. I mean, you mentioned appraisals. That was another group of people who got their fingers pointed at them. That appraisals, amazingly enough, seemed to always come out the way they needed to come out, and now not so much. Is that a change per se?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if I could take this one, they have to appraise the house that is property in question. Then they appraise 2 of the comps. You have to go take pictures. It's like doing 3 appraisals. It's 3 times the work that they used to do. And then they're double checked by the senior appraiser. So that's why it takes so long to get an appraisal done. But you start soon enough, it gets done.
Yeah.
They come, I mean, an appraiser uses the same information that we use. So for the most part, the appraisals have not been a difficulty because you're using, you know, a 4-bedroom, 2,800 square foot house that sells for maybe 400 or 450, and there's houses that we use to come up with that number. So I think there are areas that have had problems with appraisals. For the most part, you know, we've been pretty lucky. And I think the other part of that is that, you know, we haven't seen that spike in prices. We've seen a gradual thing. So I think that fills in to kind of help the appraisers with that.
And of course, that would also be, going back to where we started, it would be somewhat location driven as well in terms of the comparable prices or what's in the neighborhood. You cited, you know, former Mayor Marcucci and the tear down build-up situation. But the bottom line on it is that, you know, we rejuvenated a huge percentage of our housing stock. And we're still, the city of Elmhurst is still building. I mean, we're towards the end of 2013 here, but I think there's been we're right at like 100 new homes, and they're not building the little ones when they build.
And they're pulling up the value of every other house on the block. And you can be on York Road, a busy street, St. Charles Road. They're still tearing down a building. It doesn't make any difference. My townhouse is right on the railroad tracks. Those trains go by and everything rattles. It doesn't make a difference. We sell them. You know what I mean? That's Elmhurst.
That's kind of amazing. I have.
Isn't it amazing?
I mean,
Isn't it amazing?
They had to have come from Chicago.
well, you know, I mean,
Behind an L.
I mean, you go back to that location thing, and let's face it, we all collectively know a lot of people who want to take that 22-minute ride downtown as opposed to the farther out, where they arguably might be able to get more house for the money, but they're going to pay for it in time and a lot of other things. When do you know it's time to add some of those staff people back? Is it strictly a volume decision as you know, the heads of your various groups?
Well, I've been on my own, but I mean,
Well, that makes
now
you the
instead
head.
of working 40 hours a week, it's like 60. So I've now gotten somebody to help me with brochures and different things because I do what I want to do best is sell. And now that I have clients and I can do that, I needed to step back and hire someone to do the paperwork.
I think the growth in our industry as far as agents coming in and all that, I think there's always a little magic to it or whatever. I think there's always been people that someday I'd like to go into real estate. So I think that's always been there. I think, you know, it kind of follows the market when things got slow, you know, it started to drop out. But I think that's part of being in the real estate business and then being in the community, and you're always networking and talking with people, and somebody's, you know, sister-in-law is looking for that. So it kind of follows the market.
Now, Dennis, you've got the national RE/MAX attached, and Leo, yours is a local family-owned business. And what differences
Leo
does that
has been
present?
national. Were you red carpet at one
Yeah,
time?
the
or-
many
yeah.
years ago,
Yeah.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
What-
My father hasn't forgiven me.
Yeah, well, I guess that's part of the timing, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, for sure.
But what are there advantages, disadvantages? There has to be.
Well,
but-
we are a little bit different if the agents pay the overhead. So we
Okay.
years ago, that's why it attracted me. There was no RE/MAX, so I started RE/MAX, and it's what I always wanted. Just give me what I'm worth. Let me pay my share of the expenses. Now, it cuts out a lot of beginners, but then again, the experienced agents have brought in assistants, and they became full-time agents. So it's a good plan in that everything is down to the agent to feel what's important. We don't actually tell him how to sell a house or what rules. I mean, he's got to follow the ethics and whatever the law is. But basically, people that are power-driven. There's some agents just have that magic, and you wish you could clone them. Clone them, get more like it, and it's amazing. They're not your mold where you think they're just GQ or whatever. They're just down-to-earth people. They could be a barber. They could have been whatever in their previous profession. They just get along with people, and people trust them. You deal with people you trust, and that's basically it. And that's what you look for in a good agent. And there's always room for them in any market.
I think with an independent office like we are, I think every community has, an office or two that are independent, and there's just people that like to work in that kind of environment, and I think that the other differences aren't that great. And then the other part of it is with the growth with the internet and all of that. It's there's all sorts of sources where we can keep up and be ahead of the curve from what was out there years ago. So it's just why is somebody a Cub fan and why is somebody a Sox fan? And it's hard to be.
It's hard to be both. I know that. What, in terms of, I'm seeing a lot of stories that the experiences of some individuals during the Great Recession, such as it was, has caused a feeling with some age groups that, I don't need to own that house. The American dream for some has changed into I'm not going to buy a house and have it appreciate. I'm not going to buy a house and have it be that as important part of my life as perhaps it was with my parents or I'm just going to live in this place. I'm going to pay rent because I have to live somewhere, but I don't need to own. You've got to be reading the same things. What does that mean to you, if in fact you even agree with it?
Well, housing is a basic need. We all need it. Now, whether you want to temporarily have a lease, yet I have renters that have rented from me 18 years. Imagine if they'd have bought the place back in the 70s or 80s. They'd be paid off, right? Or close to it. It's just your mindset. Some people need roots and some, like a garden, they want things like that. And others would rather just be footloose and fancy-free and pay rent.
Yeah, I have had clients, they will never own. They don't want to give up that capital that it takes for the down payment. And they rather just pay rent and keep growing because the rent is deductible anyway, and so they've just never wanted to own.
In commercial.
Right, in commercial. I'm talking commercial, right. Mm-hmm. And then the fact is, if they grow, all of a sudden you have a lease, and lease expires and you can leave. If you own, it might take a year or 2 years to sell before you can go grow. And so there are quite a few businesses that will just only lease.
And I think in a residential, it's kind of interesting because I think of any segment of the real estate, the rents on homes have really jumped quite a bit.
Right.
And it's to see a $3,000 or $3,500 a month home rental now is not that unusual. And those are always obviously a bigger home and that, but a standard house, a 3-bedroom, maybe a bath and a half, those are $1,800 to $2,000, or to put it another way, that's $20,000 or $25,000 a year for rent. So I think the rental market was just kind of an unusual thing. I think we're going to see less of that as goes on. And then you kind of mentioned about with people being in a house and, I don't know if I need this or whatever. We came out, I can remember sitting down with some sellers, maybe 2007, 8, 9, and you'd have an offer and it wasn't what they wanted because they heard of what somebody got in 2005, and they say, I can wait. And people want to get, they want to get down to Florida, or they want to get into the condo. So I think that from that perspective, I think there's, the inventory is going to come back quite a bit with that. And there's always going to be people who like to rent, and people that want to have the yard of their own that they can make the improvements in.
So what's the short-range future look like, do you think?
As far as rentals,
Well, no, as far as
housing,
real estate.
it's the shelter's a basic need. One more thing about rentals, I got very good renters that have lost their home through short sale, where they're not really hurt that hard financially or on their credit, and they can't. The rules are now you have to wait 3 years after a forfeiture or whatever, foreclosure, to buy another home. They've just changed it to 12 months. So, but right now we got some very, very good renters paying, like you say, $2,000, $3,000 a month. They're used to having a McMansion, and they're renting something close to it, but they can't buy. But that should change, and that will be a boost for our market. And that was just in the Realtor News about a month ago.
I think as far as the market and, how far out do you want to go? But, we could cover 2013 or 14, but we don't have much to go. But the coming year, I think we're certainly on a roll with a lot of good things. Interest rates, it's a wonderful time to be buying. I mean, 4.5% interest rate. Excuse me, I don't want to bring this up again, but you mentioned your first home here in town at 18%. So interest rates.
You're lucky you got a loan. Yeah.
But I think from that standpoint, we've got a lot of good things going, and I do think the inventory is going to loosen up. It's been tight over the last 6-7 months, but I know there's just an awful lot of people that would like to have sold, 4, 5, 6 years ago that are finally reaching that point and saying, now is as good a time
The
as
baby
any.
boomers are retiring or have been retiring, and they want to sell their home and get that equity so they can go find a condo. And
We're almost out of time. Joyce, you get the last word. What does 2014 look like on the commercial side, do you think?
Well, I've been really busy, and when you were talking about price wars and having double, triple bids, that happened to me for the first time in 30 years I've been in business. I had so much fun, and I mean, because they would counter and back and forth, and I almost got asking price, and I never thought that would
Just
ever
like
happen.
the movies.
So I know things are getting good and much better when you have a price war on an industrial building. So, great.
You heard it here first, folks. Price wars in Elmhurst.
speaks well for Elmhurst.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. This has been really enjoyable, and I know our viewers, they have to have learned some things, or maybe had some things firmed up in their own minds. So Dennis Sluga, Joyce Sloan, Leo Reedy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This has been Elmhurst Now. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.
Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.